Last time on Beverly Manley Uncensored, Beverly comes up against dangerous opposition as an advocate for women's rights and working class equality.
On the political front, dark forces are rising. Michael and Beverly's democratic socialist visions are being thwarted by powerful opposition from local and international sources. Michael and Beverly stand at the crux of the Cold War conflict between the Soviet Union and the United States. Most countries are forced to pick a side in a world that is heavily polarized.
After the war, you had this Cold War between them when they didn't even talk to each other. And so a lot of developing countries lined up under one or the other, right? And because of our social democratic policies in the 80s, 70s, 80s, we did not really line up. We had a non-aligned stance that we weren't going to line up under either. But of course, the Americans were not happy with us. So, like in the case of Cuba, Cuba moved towards Russia. In the case of Jamaica, we tried to balance it, although we were not with the West and their policies and programs.
The new international economic order, which we posited in the 1970s, comes out of that non-aligned movement. And Michael Manley and Julius Nyerere are key figures, and Fidel Castro are three of the key figures in thinking around the economic questions. So that the relationship between Michael Manley and Fidel Castro is not a relationship just kind of about communism. It's a relationship that is also born out of these three men, because they include Julius, sitting down and thinking about third world countries and how we can rearrange the system so that we can, as third world countries, not just be at the bottom of the barrel, and that economic system can be a little bit fairer for us, particularly in relationship to commodity prices.
Manley is a close friend of Dr. Fidel Castro. After his first visit to Cuba, he praised the spirit of unity among the people and their ideology. It mattered little to Manley that in America, such support of a communist state was like a declaration of war.
Say now, why are we taking this risk to anger the United States of America? And the answer is this: we are not angering the United States of America. They are angering themselves. They are not going to tell me what relationship I have with Fidel Castro. We have that friendship with Cuba as part of a world alliance of third world nations that are fighting for justice for poor people in the world. And I tell you as the party leader, as long as this party is in power, we intend to walk through the world on our feet and not on our knees.
We didn't set out to anger the United States of America. We set out as a sovereign country to choose who we had relationships with across the world. And we decided that as a group of people who are no longer going to be walking around on our knees, but who are going to be standing up because the country closest to us, we wanted to have relationships with. And nobody was going to stop us from having relationships with Cuba. And we paid dearly, as he said, for that relationship. And we still have that relationship, Jamaica, with Cuba. That's all we were saying. A lot of what I was saying earlier, I mean, at some stage you have to come off the plantation. That's all I'm saying. And what is there about that? Why would anybody be angry about that? Because we are in what is called America's backyard. And America wants to control its backyard. I mean, next thing you know, after we stand up for that, we may go stand up for something else, I don't know. They were scared.
Comrades, I want to talk to you now about the word that you hear, destabilization. Is when a group of people set out secretly, cunningly, by plan, to mash up a country, mash up its discipline, mash up its good order.
The main source of violent destabilization in Jamaica came from the United States of America through the CIA. And there are former CIA officers who talked about that at the time, and others who have written since that time, because a lot of the documents were classified until a certain date. I can't remember when that date came to an end right now, but then you could apply and get any document you want. They block out the names and so on of people. So a lot of redactions took place, right? So, but you could still get a lot of stuff. For example, a scholar who taught at a university in the States at the time, when Michael went on one of his lecture tours, gave him this package to give me. And the package was the documents he had got, the documents he had applied for and received. And these documents were from the local embassy here to whoever was the relevant authority over there. Just really like a spy document. This happened in the PNP meeting, that so and so and so and so. And again, those names were redacted. Like when they say a PNP senior leader and they put his name, they made sure that we couldn't get that name.
Are you saying the CIA was operating here?
Our impression is that the CIA had a hand in what happened in 1976.
In
that
what
was
way?
our information. Well, in the way, for instance, that they would have done in Chile. Nobody denies it in Chile. It's always denied in Jamaica.
But you can begin to see the unfolding of the anxieties turning into political resistance. So first you get anxiety, then anxiety turns into political resistance, and then political resistance turns into political action. And that by the time you get to when you get to 76, the political action is that we are not going to be voting for the People's National Party if you're from the elite. Post 1976, political action becomes something else. The country was undergoing a massive project of decolonization. The project was undergoing a massive project in which ordinary Black people were beginning to feel that they had some say, some space had been created for them in the society. And the elites saying, not on my watch.
All of this happened not because the PNP just loved to fight. We had a purpose. And the purpose got us into a war. I think we were defending ourselves because a lot of the violence came in, it is said, through Seaga. In the 70s, JLP had guns, PNP had guns. Part of the party would get involved in those things. I couldn't tell you that I called a gunman and say, pick up the guns and go over there and kill 2 JLP people. I can't tell you that. I don't even know anybody who did that. Michael said it. He said, I'm not. You're not going to be involved in certain aspects of the politics. The dirty aspects of the politics. It would be people who would know that they were the army on both sides. You don't call them that, but, you know. For example, when Michael would go on the road, he couldn't go on the road alone. It wasn't safe. If Michael Manley was not a popular leader, I think they would have killed him. You kill a popular leader, what happens in the rest of the country? Think about it. They couldn't deal with that.
I'm deeply honored at the presence of the Prime Minister, Mr. Michael Manley, and his wife, Beverly. When word came to us that there was an attempted coup in Jamaica, and that in that coup, your life was to be taken, many of us felt grievous. Because no matter what the internal turmoil might be here in Jamaica, I deeply believe that you are an important part of its solution.
The conflict of powers also sparks rising political violence.
Civil war was really between us and members in the private sector. They formed what was then a private sector organization of Jamaica, which is no way the way it is now. Very enlightened now. In those days, they were really set up to deal with us. And they allied with the JLP, who were very much against what we were doing, and actually brought back the slogan about communism, which was in the environment before, but much earlier, decades earlier, I think in the 50s. They just brought it back and said what they're doing is communism. And in a society where education was low, literacy was there, you know, people tended to believe. And this cleavage now between the PNP and the JLP, highly polarized. So if the JLP say it, the PNP say and if the PNP say it, the JLP. So that was very tight.
In the late 70s, in the mid and late 70s, that violence transformed itself and became, in my view, not the normal tribal political violence, but became the violence now of destabilization, of trying to create a psychology of fear within the entire society. In my view, there were internal forces that were doing this.
I mean, the violence as a tool of destabilization was very heavy. At the time, Michael wouldn't admit it, maybe because he felt it could save our lives if we didn't admit it. But he knew. He knew it was being done. It was being done in terms of the media in the United States and how the headlines that they had in the United States media about Jamaica. Some horrible things. I think at least 3 attempts were made to assassinate him.
In the mid-1970s, the economy crashes. Oil prices are sky high. The foreign exchange reserves are low. The dollar begins to devalue. Government spending is high relative to tax receipts. Ongoing migration heightens, and we lose businesses and highly skilled labor.
Typically, countries in this position seek financial support from the International Monetary Fund, also known as the IMF.
Borrowing money from the IMF requires structural adjustments, such as significant reductions in government spending, which would ultimately bring ongoing social transformation initiatives to a halt.
I was scared for Jamaica and where Jamaica was heading with the IMF because people could see it right up front in their face. It's not something somebody had to tell you about. You know, you could see what was happening in Jamaica. But at the same IMF debate, he asked me if I would stay home. It's the only time he asked me and not come to the meeting. And I said, no, I have to come. Because he knew I was going to be against the decision. And the women at that time were a very powerful group in the party. And I made what I was told was a very powerful speech, which ended up, if I remember correctly, with me saying that he should think of Natasha's generation and how his decision today would impact upon her generation. I think those were my last words.
The vision they have for Jamaica begins to collapse. Michael is unable to lead the country towards democratic socialism. He ends up signing the IMF agreement.
Honestly, and everybody wouldn't agree with me, but he honestly did not see a way out without borrowing money and subjecting himself to the strictures of the IMF. He didn't see it. He set, I think, a group led by DK to come up with some ideas about it. It's like it wasn't called the alternative plan, but what they did, they got ideas from people all over Jamaica. And Jamaican people really responded. But by the time they finished the package, put it to him, they thought it could work. It had these other guys on it, economists and so on. He did not see how it would work. I think there was a particular problem with the foreign exchange side of it.
As part of the democratic socialist agenda, The People's Emergency Production Plan was conceived as a path to making Jamaica more self-reliant. The idea was to encourage Jamaicans to consume more locally grown and manufactured goods, while at the same time expand the sectors of local production. We needed to motivate Jamaicans to change their attitudes towards work, consumption habits, and taste patterns developed through centuries of colonial rule and foreign indoctrination. The overriding objective was to locally produce the maximum amount of goods and services consumed by the masses to minimize the need for foreign exchange. There were 6 major focus areas for the production plan: agriculture, eat and grow local; manufacturing, produce and consume locally made goods; construction, utilize local building materials like natural woods; fuels and energy, focus on solar, water, and wind energy rather than oil; manpower and employment, educate and train a world-class workforce; foreign economic relations, build international relationships with like-minded Eastern European and Third World countries, as well as strengthen relations with China. The PNP envisioned building an equitable economic system that was not dependent on international capitalist structures. As you can imagine, this national agenda probably did not sit well with institutions like the IMF or the World Bank.
And so the decision was then taken to go into an IMF program with the view that we keep on trying to develop the production plan, and then to also do the reforms. That didn't work, and to be honest with you, objectively, it couldn't work. Because once you are in the IMF program, that's it. You can't find a way around it and through it and so on and so forth. There's very strict set of conditionalities.
After a while, IMF came to mean is Manley's fault. So the opposition was able to switch it on us, so that when you had a hard life, it was Manley's fault. It was very clever. IMF. I empathize with Michael Manley's decision at the time to go along with the IMF. He had a strong backing of his cabinet. They could not see an alternative. And sometimes a leader takes a decision, takes a risk. Even when you think that something may not go the way you hope it will go, but you have to take a decision. That's the thing about leadership. And he was a risk taker.
The price is murderous. As we learnt in bitter experience between 1977 and 1980, the whole IMF approach is a disaster. It has not worked in any third world country in the world because it wasn't designed for the third world.
Oh no, Mr. IMF, no. Your mountains we will not climb. Oh no, Mr. IMF, no. Everyone can see, even the blind. Your terms, it's a shame, I must say. Jamaicans won't continue this way. It ain't no shame that we fail your test.
On election night, when we realized that it was a wipeout and we weren't feeling safe because, well, I didn't know we would live. I mean, the atmosphere was really bad. Couldn't go on, couldn't do anything. So some close friends and political allies came to the house and were there wondering what to do. And then we decided we would go in an unidentified car to this house. Not only was it scary, I think we had, between the two of us, we had about $500 Jamaican dollars. Because we were there for service. So money, we never had money. So I just put it in our hand and said, listen, take these children up there and make sure they are taken care of. Because my only sister lived in Washington at the time. And I couldn't get her on the phone because, as you can imagine, the phones were just jammed. Jamaica, we couldn't get any calls out or in. And I gave her my sister's number and everything so that when things calm down, you know, they could talk about who's going to bring up these children. Suddenly we looked at each other and said, none of us are cowards. Right? And at first, before we went, Michael said, Beverly, you better stay with the children. If they have to come for me, they're going to come for me. And in one of my most proud moments, I said, whither thou go, I go. I said, I'm not leaving you, because we're in this thing together. So I'm going to send out the children, and I'm staying with you. And we sat in the garden on a little bench, just thinking about what we would do together. So the children went off, and he and I. When we were up at his house for a little while, we said, what are we doing here? We're not cowards. Let's just go on the street and see what happens. And when we went on the street that night, the two of us in the car, I don't even know if we had security. If we had it, it would have been minimal. Because when you lose, you lose, you know. And the people are coming out and waving and shouting. And they used to call him Joshua, Joshua, putting up them fists. I think that is when I started to breathe again. I said, what is this? This is not for real. So in a sense, the people, you could still have admirers and supporters out there.
In the meantime, the difficulty in politics fractures Beverly and Michael's relationship.
If anything broke up my marriage, it was the tension of the ideology, the ideological outlooks between the left wing and the right wing impacted on our relationship because I grew left. I kept growing left. Now, as a leader of the party, he was like center left. I felt every marriage had come to an end. He did not. So he was really fighting for his life, as he put it. So the letters would, I said, have you had a chance yet, darling, to think this through? How can I help you think this through? Do you want to go somewhere with the children? Should we move into a different house? Things. That's the kind of things he would write to help me to think through what was happening. He really, when I said fought, anybody who could get to come and talk to me, he got them to come and talk to me. If it was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a good friend, anybody, people just kept on coming. But for me, it had ended.
Beverly is disappointed because she is still a firm believer in the cause. Michael has failed. She casts her eye on someone else who might be better able to put up the fight. Next time on Beverly Manley Uncensored, the scandalous affair and entanglement with Michael's political ally, D.K. Duncan. Beverly reflects on her life and the dreams deferred. She has valuable advice for the next generation. Don't miss the next gripping episode of Beverly Manley Uncensored.
What's your name? All right, Tony. Tony Little? I'm Beverly Manley. How are you? Eh? One love, man. One love, one love. God bless you too. Yes? Your grandmother, don't it? Yeah, man, I know. Hey. And I'm gonna need some paintings. I'll be in touch. All right, give Miss Marge one for me.
She's not here right now.
But you can leave one for me. All right, Tony. Take care. Manners, man. Manners. Pleasure. Lord Jesus. Him now don't know him. It's called orgasmic.